Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. The Kremlin has launched a criminal probe targeting some of its most outspoken critics, among them exiled Russian businessman Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Russia's Federal Security Service says it's investigating all 22 members of Russia's anti-war committee, accusing all of them of plotting a violent power grab. And joining me now to discuss this all is Sergei Erofeev, sociologist at Rutgers University. Sergei, so glad to have you here with us on World Talks here on TVP World. Let's get straight into it. Now,
hi, Diana.
The FSB says the charges relate to what they describe as terrorism. We're talking about the activities of Khodorkovsky's backed group. The members also include, of course, Vladimir Kara-Murza, Garry Kasparov, and so forth. Let me ask you this. What does this tell us? And is it actually safe to say that this is the Kremlin's current level of fear towards the opposition?
That's exactly to the point, Diana. I represent an international academic community, and I would like to recall something, if you don't mind. Just after the murder of Alexei Navalny, my colleagues and I, drafted a letter that was signed by 14 Nobel laureates and hundreds of other prominent scientists. In addition to calling for an end to the aggression against Ukraine, the letter urged the international community and the world leaders to deny Vladimir Putin legitimacy, which means to reject his claim to represent the Russian people on equal footing with democratic leaders. And this process of delegitimation is indeed unfolding in front of our eyes gradually. And we're watching it in real time. PACE, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, has taken steps to deny Putin the right to represent Russians in an international organization. I think that's the immediate reason why Putin and his Secret Service decided to go further, designating these people terrorists and those who want to seize power by force.
Sergei, a lot of interesting things you pointed out there. I mean, right now you mentioned reason and reasoning, and you also made reference to Alexei Navalny. But now let me ask you more about timing. Why do you think that it took Vladimir Putin almost 4 years now into this war with Ukraine to, go after Khodorkovsky?
But that's exactly the point. It's only within recent days that the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe decided to go to the next level of structuring its dialogue with the democratic forces of Russia. It's been a very, very slow process. I was myself a part of that process 2 years ago in Brussels when it wasn't the Parliamentary Assembly, it wasn't PACE, it was the European Parliament who has been, thanks to the efforts of people like Andrews Kubilius, who was at that time one of the parliament members, and now is the High Commissioner of the European Commission for Space and Defense. So these people have tried to structure this dialogue with people who have some authority among Russians, both in exile and within Russia. And now this is taking shape, more or less. And this is exactly why Putin actually marked the degree of his fear at this moment by designating this group of people terrorists,
Sergei,
because they are influential in these kind of decisions.
Exactly. Hence my next question. If so much that, of their work is actually operating from abroad, right, or organizing through online, seminars or YouTube channels, online platforms, European forums, right? That's exactly what I wanted to ask you, is how much potential do these people actually have? Kasparov, Khodorkovsky, Mikhail Kasyanov. I mean, how much do they actually, can they influence of what happens inside Russia? The fact that they're in exile.
That again, thank you. That again points at the degree of this fear. I've been repeatedly saying that the main enemy of Putin are not Ukrainians. and they are not even Americans. The main enemy of Putin is the Russian people. And what the Russian people are lacking is the political force which could bring more focus in how they think about this illegitimate regime in Russia. And the degree of fear is such that even this anti-war committee, which doesn't have much resources, and one has to remember that the YouTube outreach has been curtailed and, if not completely, banned in Russia, still they fear anyone who has some authority among the Russian population on both sides of the borders. The fear is so huge, and it's been growing, that they have to take such steps.
Sergei, I mean, Khodorkovsky really has been one of the most vocal anti-war voices, of course, outside of Russia. I actually had a chance to sit down with him, with Mikhail Khodorkovsky, at the Warsaw Security Forum a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we discussed many issues, many pressing issues, among them not just the war in Ukraine, but about the future of Russia. And I'm just going to invite you to listen into a part of this, the interview.
The West believed that if Putin started losing, he would lose power. That was wrong. The second part was true. And the West believed that if Putin lost power, Russia would collapse. And the collapse of a country with nuclear weapons is what the West feared, although in reality, Russia wouldn't have collapsed if Putin's regime fell. Nevertheless, the West made the decision, and as a result, Putin is not losing the war now. And since he's not losing the war, his power has correspondingly increased. It's possible we'll see Putin in office for another 5 to 7 years.
Sergei, let me ask you, do you agree, and what kind of Russia might emerge after Putin? What do you think about what Khodorkovsky said?
This is exactly one of the counterproductive narratives, to say that if there is no Putin, there is no Russia, or if there is no Putin, there will be such a horrible collapse of Russia, which will cause even more trouble to the world. This is definitely not true, and it has been historically proven many times in different geographic settings. Russia is no exception. There is enough resources of democratic education of the past 20 plus years. There are people who learned the new ways of how to organize the democratic process. And Putin's fear is exactly that those who can represent Russia in pace, although there is no delegation yet, there are many talks how to organize the process of forming this delegation. So if there is such a delegation, it will definitely consist of those people who know how to proceed when Putin is no longer in power, because they will represent those healthy forces, both abroad and inside Russia, to whom Western leaders will be ready to talk. And those Putin's successors, who will represent his clan or his mafia state immediately after his disappearance, if it happens, they will have to be very careful how to respond to the demands of Western democracies. They will have to be pressed to conduct free and fair elections, or at least to some degree free and fair elections. And the people who will be involved by that time for a while in this dialogue with Western democracies within PACE or within some other international organizations, these people will have a huge say in that process.
How realistic is all this? And I mean, the timeline, I mean, Khodorkovsky told me, we can still see Putin seated for about 5 to 7 years. And with everything that you just said, is that actually a realistic scenario?
Well, it would be irresponsible to say, standing on academic scholarly grounds, that we know when Putin's regime will disintegrate. It depends on the combination of factors. Again, I have to repeat that there are 3 fronts fighting Putin and his regime. One is Ukraine, that's the military front. The second is Western democracies with their diplomatic and economic resources of pressuring Putin. And the third is the Russian civil society. It does exist. People in Russia cannot speak freely, but those who are outside of Russia can be their voice. So we cannot say when and how exactly Putin's regime will collapse. It will end one day. There is no doubt about that. Even if the reason can be biological and it will take too many years or even decades. But we should be ready because Russian history in the 20th century shows how abrupt and unpredictable events can be. That happened in 1917 with the fall of the Tsar, and that happened in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the communist rule. So if there's enough pressure on the part of the three fronts, things can develop very, very quickly. And the task for progressive Russians, for those who have got some democratic education and have some authority among broader Russian population, these Russians should be ready for that moment, and they should work towards strengthening all these three fronts. And the task of PACE and other European bodies is to facilitate in this process.
Thank you so much, Sergei Erofeev, sociologist at Rutgers University, for all your input with us here this evening on World Talks.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.